And welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, and then just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is the channel where I talk about my favorite movies. And right now I'm finishing up a Masterpiece Spotlight, which I do every once in a while for non-horror films that I believe are masterpieces, 10 out of 10 masterpieces. And we are going to finish it up with 3 Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. I'm so glad to have this. I like that case. 3 Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. Now, this movie was released in 2017. It was directed by Martin McDonagh, whom I love as a director. I just got his newest movie called The Banshees of Inisherin, which I'm so glad to finally have to. But I love Martin McDonagh. It was written and directed by Martin McDonagh, and it stars Frances McDormand, who we just saw in Primal Fear, and Woody Harrelson, whom we just saw in The People vs. Larry Flint, and the fantastic big crush of mine, Sam Rockwell. I love Sam Rockwell all the way back to his very first role, which was Clown House, which is a little horror movie called Clown House. That was his first movie. But I love Moon. I love him in Moon. But I love Sam Rockwell. I love Woody Harrelson. And Frances McDormand is absolutely fantastic. Now, if you've never seen this movie opens with Frances McDormand's character named Mildred. She's driving down the road in her I'm getting a chill. So she's driving down the road in her little station wagon, and we don't really know what's going on. She drives by these 3 old billboards on the side of the road that's kind of very close to her house, on the way to her house. She stops and then she looks at them, and then she goes up to one and gets the name off of it. And she goes into town to the Ebbing advertising place and asks the guy. His name is Red, and he's got beautiful red hair like me. But he goes and asks. She goes and asks Red, "How much? What are they?" Well, he didn't even remember that they had it out there because since the freeway moved in, nobody goes down that road, right? So nobody's rented them for many, many, many years. And he didn't even know they were out there. So she rents these things, and she gives him the notes of what she wants the 3 billboards to say. And that's when you actually find out, because when he reads the notes, he's like, "Oh, you're that girl." He says her name. I can't remember her name, but "You're her mother." And he's like, "Yes, I'm her mother." And he's like, she's like, "When can you have them up?" And he said, "By Easter." And she said, "That'll be great." So once they're up, the way you find out what they say is that she's also got like a 17-year-old son. So she had picked him up from school, and they're driving by, and he notices them. And as he looks out the window and reads each one, this is the first time you get to see what they say. And, it's like raped while dying. And then the second was still no arrests. Why not Chief McCullough, or whatever his name is? Willoughby. Chief Willoughby. So, raped and dying, still no arrests. Why not Chief Willoughby is what the 3 billboards say. So, this is when you find out that her daughter was viciously raped and murdered and set on fire right there by right out there by those billboards. And that was 10 months ago. And she hasn't even heard from them in 10 months. The police. So they can't find him. And of course now you're introduced to Chief Willoughby, who's played by Woody Harrelson. You're introduced to his deputy, who's played by Sam Rockwell, who is just, I don't even know what to think about his character, because he is like whacked. racist and mean and all of that, and dumb as a sack of hammers as well. So this story begins to unfold. They find out that the billboards are out there. Chief Willoughby, I think one of the most potent scenes, because Sam's character is so angry about it, because he's angry about everything, but he is so angry about, and everybody's angry that she is like insulting the chief because he is beloved, right? So he goes out there to talk to her, and he's like, there's no DNA. I mean, there's DNA, but it doesn't match anyone. There's no match to the DNA in the CODIS system. No eyewitnesses, no nothing. I don't understand what else we can do. And then she's like, got to keep it going. Got to keep it going. You can't just let it go cold. You got to keep it going. And he's like, well, there's another thing. I'm dying. I have cancer because he's got pancreatic cancer. And she's like, I know. And he's like, and she's like, everybody knows. Most everybody in town, everybody knows. Well, that was a shock to him. But he was like, and you still put these billboards up? And she's like, well, it wouldn't be as impactful after you croak. It wouldn't have the same impact after you're dead. So the stunned look on his face is just, wow. So he thought that going out there and telling her that he's dying of cancer might make her stop, and only to find out that she already knew that. And as a matter of fact, if she waited till he was dead, it wouldn't have as much impact. So that's how, she is out there about this. She's very angry about all this. The next really cool scene that I like is when she's at the bar and, you're dealing with Sam's character, and Red is there, and this little midget, the guy from Game of Thrones, he's in this as well. So she comes home from the bar going, I think that midget's trying to get into my pants, not knowing that her son is sitting there with the local priest. And once she sees him, she's like, oops. But she wants to know what he wants. And he starts telling her that he's there to talk about those signs. And she's like, what, you take a poll or something? And he's like, well, everybody's unhappy about it. Everybody is really upset about what happened to your daughter, and we're there for you about that, but we don't like this billboard thing. Now, she gives this speech. She's like, well, you know what I was thinking about? I was thinking about those gangs in LA, those Crips and those Bloods, and how many years ago they come up with this law that was like, even if you join one of these gangs, the Crips or the Blood, if you join one of these gangs, even though you have nothing to do with the crime that they commit, you're standing over here on the corner minding your own business, but down the road, a couple of your Crip buddies kill somebody, you're culpable. You are still culpable because you joined the gang. You're part of the gang. Now, and she's right, these laws do exist, or did exist. So what's funny is the priest is like, yeah, that sounds good. And she's like, well, that reminds me of you church boys. You got your colors. You got your clubhouse, which is your churches. So you got your clubhouse. You got your colors. You all stand around it. So, if you're just minding your own business, reading your Bible, but one of your priests is down there, an altar boy, you're culpable because you joined the gang. So, I'm of course not saying that speech because it would be wiped off YouTube real quick. But that speech my God, it is phenomenal. And the town really doesn't like what she's done with these billboards. There's a few people, but, you know, these billboards are really upsetting people. So the next cool scene is she drives her son to school, and this boy, he's about 16, and standing with a girl and another boy. Right as she pulls up, he throws like a soda can, and it hits her windshield, and the son is like, no, Mom, no. And she jumps right out of that car, and I was like, oh no. She walks right up to the guy who she just saw throw the can. It's not like they were hiding, you know, and all the parents and all the kids are sitting around. And she walks right up to his face, and she's like, you see who threw that can? He's like, what can? She hit him. She kicked him in the nuts so hard they probably come out his nose. That was hilarious. That was so hilarious. Then she looked immediately to the girl standing next to him, and she's like, did you see who threw that can? She says, no, I didn't see nothing. Kicked her right in the cooch. Just as hard as she did that guy. Put her on the ground as well. Because, little secret for you people out there. My female cousins told me this. Kicking a girl there is the same, it has the same impact as kicking a boy there. So she proved that in this movie because she put both of them on the ground immediately. She looked at the guy next to her, and she's like, and he was like, and he turns around. And so she climbs back in the car, you know, and her son is like, thanks, Mom. And it's like, but none of the parents did anything, and none of the other kids did anything because everybody saw that kid try to bust her windshield with that thing. So I think him and that girl got exactly what they deserved, and that was put on the ground for a good 20 minutes. I imagine they had to roll on the ground. If you've ever been kicked in the crotch, I'm sure you can commiserate. So that was a really cool scene. Sam freaking out, Sam Rockwell's character freaking out, and going and beating the absolute hell out of Red comes after one of the most pivotal periods in the movie. And that was Chief Willoughby. You see him have this really sweet time with his wife and daughters at the lake. And what prompted this? He arrested, Mildred went to see the dentist, and the dentist was one of those that weren't happy about the signs. He starts trying to drill her tooth without anesthesia. And she's like, whoa. And so he puts the shot there, and then he's like, you can tell he's going to make it as painful as possible, and she could tell too. And so when he started doing that, he was like, you know, about these signs, we really don't. She grabbed his hand, and she made him drill a hole in his thumb, his own thumbnail. So Willoughby had come and arrested her and took her in for questioning. And as he's sitting there, they kind of get into a back and forth about these billboards and who and what. And the dialogue is fucking amazing because Martin McDonagh knows dialogue, right? And he's in the middle of a sentence and he coughs blood all over her face. It's a very, very shocking scene. Shocks him, shocks the audience, shocks her. And then she's like, I know, baby. And he's like, I'm sorry. And I know, baby. And they take him off. Well, at the hospital, I think he knows the time is getting close with his cancer. So you see the scene where he has this wonderful time with his wife and kids at the lake. And then that night, they have this nice conversation, and he leaves her kind of half drunk on the couch, you know, from their drinking that day. And he walks out there and leaves a note on the table. And he walks out there to his horse pen where he puts a bag over his head that says, don't remove this, just call the boys. And he tops himself. Now, when the news hits the next day, of course, that just shocks everybody. And of course, the correlation between her billboards and him doing that Even though him doing that had nothing to do with the billboards. But of course, everybody's going to believe that. Even though they know he's dying of cancer. So this upsets Sam's character so bad that he goes across the street and he beats the hell out of Red, throws him out a window, down onto the street, hurts him more, and then walks in there. Now, what he doesn't realize is that not only because the chief is now dead, the state has sent a new chief to take over, and it's this brawny black guy in this town with this deputy who is like an extremely racist, right? So he goes into there, and the chief saw that happen. So he comes in, announces who he is, and he promptly fires, Sam's character. So now things are getting like really ugly because the billboards are set on fire as well. She tries to put them out. There's an awful emotional scene where she's trying to put them out. And she decides to take revenge because she knows it's the police department, which it actually wasn't. It was her ex-husband, which she finds that out later. But she goes to firebomb the police department, which she does with Molotov cocktails. Now, she kept calling. Now, Sam's character had been told that Chief Willoughby had left a note for him and to come pick it up after everybody was gone and to leave his keys. So he had showed up there, but he's always listening to his earbuds. He really likes ABBA. But he's always listening to his earbuds. And so he goes in there and he's reading this note, not knowing that Mildred is across the street up where in Red's office, where he got thrown out the window, with a whole line. I think she's got 5 Molotov cocktails. And she keeps calling to make sure no one's in there, but he can't hear it because he's wearing his earphones listening to ABBA while he reads this letter. Now you get to vocally hear the letter read by Chief Willoughby, where it tells him that the reason he's let him get away with all of the stuff he has is because he knows he's a good guy at heart, that he's not really racist, he's not really homophobic, he's not really all of these things. He's just angry at life, and that he's never going to be what he wants to be, a good man, until he gets rid of that hate. So it's a very, very heartfelt letter. Meanwhile, Mildred starts bombing the police department with those Molotovs. She's like, fuck it. And boom, boom, boom. So she's basically blocked. The entire front is like in flames. And he's turned around. This is all happening behind him, and he's reading this letter with his earphones in. So he doesn't even realize that he is now completely trapped because there's obviously not a back door to this place. So she throws the 4th one, and it blows the window out. And oops, he now is aware of the situation. So he has to run through the fire, and he specifically saves her daughter's case file and runs out with it to protect it. She then sees him and comes across and realizes what she's done and that he had saved her daughter's thing. So she's, it's kind of left like that. She sees his sacrifice because he's like burnt and stuff. So he gets put in the hospital in the same room with Red. And Red comes over, and this is a very sweet scene, but Red comes over and is like, hey, buddy, what happened to you? Because the nurse told him, he's a burn victim. He comes over, and I can imagine what he must have been thinking. Because, his face is wrapped up. So he's like seeing through these. And this is the guy that he damn near literally killed. He broke him all to hell. And he's talking sweet to him. And it's like, can I get you some orange juice, and stuff like that. And he finally says it, he goes, I'm sorry. And the guy's like, and Red's like, sorry about what? And he's like, I'm sorry for throwing you out the window, which makes Red realize who this is. And it just like, you can see it on his face. It's just like, but he's a better person. And I think that's what it shows him. Because he walks away like, stop crying. Because, he starts crying and everything behind his bandages. Crying, you're just going to make it worse, And he goes over and he comes back, though, with the orange juice and sets it down, showing him exactly what Chief Willoughby had told him about, you've got to stop all this hatred, So that was a very poignant scene. And then once he gets out, he's all upset, about being fired and stuff like that. But he's at a bar and he hears this guy sick, talking some sick crap about how about a year ago he had set a girl on fire while he assaulted her. And so he thinks, this is the guy, but I've got to get his DNA. So he comes up with this way. This is a really bad guy. He had already had a confrontation with Mildred at the gift store. So he was like, he came up with this idea that if he could get this guy, so he just sat down in front of him and he's like, let me do a magic trick for you. And what he did was he raked his fingers across, knowing that he was going to get the absolute shit beat out of him for doing that. But he raked his fingers across his face to get all that guy's blood and flesh under his nails. He got the absolute hell beat out of him. And one of the other people in the bar was like, that's a cop. That's a cop. And so the guy took off. And he went home barely able to walk. I mean, first you get the hell burnt up out of you. Now you'd get broken half at the club, at the bar. But he makes it home, and he puts that stuff into evidence tubes, and, to give it to the thing. And he calls Mildred, and he tells her that he thinks he's got the guy who did it. So she has a day of hope, But it turns out it wasn't the guy, that this guy was in the military. This guy wasn't even in the country. So, yes, he did what he said he did, probably. But it wasn't here, and it wasn't her, And you've also found out why Mildred is so like this. Mildred and her daughter and her son were bantering, and her daughter wanted to use the car. And she was like, well, no, I'm not going to let you use the car because you've been smoking weed today. And so they started having a fight. And he said, but I will give you the money for a taxi to take you where you want to go and come back. And that didn't satisfy the girl, pissed her off, and she's like, I'm not letting you use the car because you smoked weed today. So the daughter starts storming out of the house, and one of the things that she screams at her mom is, fine, I'll just walk, and I hope I get graped along the way. The bad thing is the mother, Mildred's so mad, said, I hope you get graped too. And then the girl slams the door, and unfortunately she walks down the road and she got murdered. Graped and murdered. So that just goes to show, be careful what you say to somebody when they leave, because it might be the last thing that you ever say to them, was the point that Martin is trying to make in this dialogue. So you kind of see why Mildred has such issues now, and issues with the perpetrator not being caught. So he had called her and told her that. He even came out to see her. And you can tell that he has really changed. That letter from the chief, and she had gotten one too, which was very funny. Actually, his wife delivered the letter to her, and she didn't even know who the wife was. But she delivered the letter to her, and she went out onto the front of the gift shop and read it, and you heard Chief reading it. And it was kind of funny because he was like, it turns out that he even paid for the next month's rentals on the billboards for her because he thought it was a great idea. And he said, and another thing, even though those billboards had nothing to do with what I did, because see, he did that because he didn't want his wife to have to take care of him for months while he rotted away. Didn't have nothing to do with the billboards. But he told Mildred, he's like, but everybody will think it did. So, good luck, and I hope they don't kill you. So his final little bit of humor in that letter was, I even paid for him, so you got to defend him for another month. And good luck with that. So, but Martin McDonagh is really good about very dark humor behind very potent, dramatic stuff. That's why I like him so much as a director. But, so when it turns out that the guy's not the one who did it, he had to call her and tell her that it wasn't him. That he was a bad person, that he was a rapist, and that he was that he had killed, but it wasn't the daughter. He wasn't even in the country. So it was probably because the chief tried to get the guy to understand that it was Afghanistan is where he was from, where he had been in the military. So that's what he had done to somebody over there. So when he called and told her, he was like, but I do have his license. I do know where he lives. I have his tag. I know where he lives. And he tells her he lives in Idaho. And she's like, well, that's funny. I was going to Idaho tomorrow. And he's like, you would mind if if you mind company? She's like, sure. So they set out that morning to go and kill this guy. Along the way, though, as they're driving, she admits that she's the one that burnt down, she's like, I'm the one who burnt down the police station. And he's like, well, who the hell else would it have been? So she laughed about that, knowing that he knew the reason he's burnt up is her, and yet here he is. You see how everything is like, it's all forgiveness and everybody coming together. So he's like, asked her, was she sure about, or she then asked him, was he sure about what they were doing? He said, you mean killing this guy? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, not really. And she's like, and he's like, what about you? And she's like, no, I'm not really. We'll figure it. We'll decide on the way whether to do it. And that's how the movie ends. So when I was finally able to get a hold of this, which was, I guess, like 6 weeks ago, when I was able, because it's not easy to find. It's it's out of print, so it's going out of print. If you want it, you better go get it, kind of thing, or you're going to start paying more and more for it. When I finally did get a hold of this, I have watched this movie 5 or 6 times in just 6 weeks, because this has instantly become one of my comfort movies, so I'm pretty sure. In other words, when I'm sitting around here, even though there's 3,000 movies and I can't find something to watch, I always grab one of my comfort movies. It'll be Jennifer Lawrence and Passengers. I don't know why. Or, some other movie that's just one of those movies I've seen 100 times and just can't never stop. This is one of those that I just grab and I'm like, I can't think of anything to watch. Well, just watch that again. So that's what they call comfort movies. And it's one of mine. So that was 3 Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. Let me know if you have seen it and if you thought it was as powerful as I did. Believe me, if you have not seen this movie, the dialogue in this movie is just mesmerizing. Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell, and the rest of the cast. These people are, again, top-tier masterpiece performances. There's nothing like a movie with a fantastic script, fantastic cinematography, and then you have a cast that is like at the top of their game. The magic that can make to have a piece of entertainment a film that is so masterful in every aspect is pretty cool. And believe me, this movie is a fucking masterpiece. 2017's 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. And I will see you in the next thing I do. Love you, miss you. Bye-bye. Always remember, never forget, you're a very, very special person. Even if you don't put up 3 billboards to insult the sheriff of your county. But in any event, let me know what you think about it. I appreciate you taking the time to watch these, if any. Comment if you feel you can. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.